Hi, everyone. Suman here with Walt. We are back to talk more about scaling businesses. In our first episode, we really talked about what scaling really means and understanding how companies really have a different definition of that. If you really want to dive into that more, we're online. You can definitely check out that episode. But in this episode, we are going to talk about how important it is how scaling really has to do with people, right? So this is going to be really about how scaling is so important with people and what happens when you have maybe the wrong person in your organization and also the right person in your organization in the wrong seat and how that affects the business. So, Walt, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about this.
You bet, Suman. Thanks for having me. Glad to that we're doing another one of these.
I know. They're so fun and I think it's just really effective. And this is going to be a short, guys. We're just going to go into some things, but I think it's really effective for people to be able to kind of really understand what scaling is and how important the people side of it is.
Yeah.
So the first question, people really talk about hiring all the time, right? We're a hiring company, we understand that. But what are leaders really missing once they make that new hire?
Yeah. Getting it right with finding the right person is obviously half of it. I'll answer it from the perspective of the businesses. So I've hired a lot of people as a chief revenue officer and prior to that. But then in what I do, where today I'll give you an answer based off what I see with business owners. So whether I'm working with one of my engineering firms or a builder or someone in logistics, uh, here's what I typically see. They hire someone based off their experience and they end up firing them for who they are. Meaning the resume looks good, the referrals look good, the panel interview went well, some of their experience lines up, they make the decision and bring them on, and then they haven't thought about, well, who's going to manage them? What are we asking them to do? Are they going to be solving problems independently, or is it going to be more collaboratively? All of those kind of pieces that go into the back end with how they're, and then how are they hardwired? That's where the problems that I have noticed happened is once you've selected them and brought them on, um, so goes it from that aspect of it. You can have the right person in the right seat and manage them poorly, the way you want to manage them, and you're going to lose them anyway. Or you can have the right manager manage them according to how the person is hardwired. But if you're asking them to start versus finish something, and they're really a finisher, and vice versa, you're going to lose them or you'll say it's not working. So it's a complex answer, but I see it ranging from all of those aspects where they put too much emphasis on the objective data, the resume, who they're and not so much on the subjective data, and not so much on the objective data, which is how are they hardwired, and then who's going to manage them.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important piece because one of the things you brought up was it's also you can have this, we talk about all the time this A+ candidate that really has all those things. But if the management, if the we always say like if you don't have onboarding structure, if you don't have what are they going to be doing when they walk in the door? If you're not building that trust with them through that management style, then we see it all the time where we place these really fantastic candidates at organizations and the client's so excited to have them on board. They fit all the boxes. They've interviewed them multiple times and everything's great for those first, and I think we talk about that first 3 months, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then it starts going the other way. The client feels like, well, they're not, I don't understand. They're not getting this done. I thought they were going to get this done. There's this miscommunication. And then I see leaders will jump in and start micromanaging, start being reactive in
Sure.
those situations. And then usually we see is those candidates, because obviously we're talking to candidates all the time, like, why are you leaving? And usually it's because they feel like that they become disengaged at that point, like you
Sure.
said. And I do think, and I know for you with what you do specifically, it is such an important piece to understand how someone's wired, right? Because
Absolutely. Like
you can't
I'll
change.
even from my own experience, like I was a good starter. I could build a plan. I could prioritize the plan. I could put it in motion. I could communicate it. But if I didn't have people around me that could finish and execute it, it was just a plan.
Right.
But it took me mistakes of learning, of thinking, oh, I can do that myself.
Mhm.
Um, but if someone was going to hire me as a finisher, well, I can interview for it because we can all modify, all of us. It's just how long can you keep it up and what's it going to cost you? And for me, I could probably modify for a solid year. And then after that, it's why are things not finishing?
Right.
Because I'm more of a starter. So it's really just depends on it's what are you paying them to do, and then who's going to manage them to determine well what's the ultimate outcome when the newness of the honeymoon of working there wears off.
Yeah, and kind of going into the next question, this kind of goes into it. So I'm sure you've walked into businesses quite a bit of times where there's really great people there, great people who have the values and want to be there, but they're in the
Sure,
wrong seat. So how does that affect, and how does that affect the business? How does that affect the overall morale? How does that affect the
sure.
leadership we've seen?
I was just having a conversation last week with a logistics business on this very topic, and when I like I said earlier, we can all modify. The question is, how long can you keep it up and what cost? Well, when you're modifying and think of it like writing with your non-dominant hand,
Mhm.
we can all do it. If I'm right-handed, I can write my name. It's easy. I don't think about it. It's effortlessly. I could probably multitask and do a few other things at the same time. But when someone says, now take the pen, put it in your left hand and start writing, I can do it, but it's uncomfortable. I'm probably pushing back. I'm asking, why are you making me do this? It's not as efficient. I couldn't do it as many times. So when you're asking someone to come in and write with their non-dominant hand, they can do it, but there's ultimately a cost. And so
Mhm.
when you think about opportunity costs, let's put it into a sales conversation like this logistics is the unintended downstream effect of how they're engaging with clients or not engaging. When they are engaging, what's is it when you have a disengaged employee interacting with a potential client? There's not obviously there's not that ownership. There's not that element to of someone that feels like they're going to be around for a while, and so that doesn't show up on a P&L.
Mhm.
Or if someone's leaving and you assign their work to someone else who's a top performer where now you're overloading them. And
Mhm.
so you keep giving your best people all the work because they're consistent, steady grinders. Well, there's a burnout effect and they ultimately can't be their very best. And all of those opportunity cost is what I would call them. The cost of a disengaged employee is opportunity cost. None of those things show up on a P&L, which makes it so hard to track to understand really what did this cost me and having the wrong person in the wrong seat. Surely we tie everything back to, well, it's the salary. But if you're asking them to go develop business, that's months and months, if not a year plus, of lost opportunity because they've stopped. You
Mhm.
won't know that they've stopped initially, but it's down the road when you ultimately have to make the decision that they're no longer a fit, when probably all along they just weren't a fit in the first
Mhm.
place because they were more of an account manager, not a business developer,
Mhm. No,
if
that
that
makes so
makes
much
sense.
sense. No, it makes so much sense. I mean, I've seen it in my own organization where we've brought people on who, had really the values and were good at the job, could do the job, but then when things got a little bit, there was harder things that needed to be resolved or more difficult
Sure,
conversations with clients or those kind of things. That was just not their natural place to be. And no
sure.
matter how much coaching or mentoring or all those kind of things, ultimately it just led to them feeling burned out and leaving the organization.
Yeah,
And I think I've learned that, I think you can have employees in your organization that are awesome, like wow, these are just, they can do all these things, but I think this is very true what you're saying. When you put the most on these your high capacity people, there's a lot of times it will lead to burnout. And also, I think on the other side of that is that a lot of times the people, and we're going to talk about this, it happens is you along the way you're keeping people in the organization who aren't the right matches, right? A lot of times, have you seen that too? So like the
Oh
last
yeah, we're
why do
absolutely
leaders keep people for so long that
sure.
aren't obviously the right people?
Yeah, well, so I use, call it human analytics, psychometrics, to really understand more before I bring this person onto my payroll or promote them. How are they hardwired? How are they going to show up based off what I'm paying them to do? And if you have someone that is hardwired to be more of a non-confrontational person, they prefer harmony, they're more of a team player, they're more about people first and making connection, and then they well, I'll just go with that. They are more hardwired to let an underperformer go longer than they actually should because of when I have this hard conversation, there is the chance this person will not like me anymore. And if my main priority is to be liked, even though obviously I'm not going to say that, they will avoid hard conversations or they'll hang on to underperformers longer than they should. Well, if we lived in this world where you could tie an opportunity cost to that and show up on a P&L, I'm sure that would become a KPI that everyone would begin to get bonused off of because it would be such a glaring expense or an opportunity on the P&L that they would have to do something sooner. And then the other if the other side of that coin is someone who is a micromanager and their level of what perfect looks like is so high that no one can ever live up to their expectation. And so therefore, instead of saying good job or you did this very well, it is, well, you didn't do this or you didn't do this. Well, after a while, someone does not feel like they can be successful because nothing is good enough because the other person is so hardwired to be critical because it's a hostile trait with do it this way. And if it's not this way, it's the wrong way. Again, you've got a disengaged employee and sometimes, and if they don't like change, they'll just stay in the role longer than they should. And they're not as productive in that role, which ultimately costs the company money or you're not getting what you should be out of your payroll.
Yeah, I mean it's we see it on the people side, right? We see it in organizations so much where we one of the things I see is organizations will keep people who are high producers.
Yeah,
They're usually like they're in sales and they're very good at the client side, they're very good, but they don't have the value side. So they're causing a lot of problems. Like some of the things that you're talking about, the leadership, the leaders who really micromanage, the leaders who have this obsession with perfectionism, and we see it where we think the most dangerous employees are this very reactive types of managers who can't sit back and breathe for 5 seconds and just
sure.
have to. And I think that what you're saying is some of those traits are just wired in someone, right?
Yeah,
Somebody being a little bit more in that way, but maybe they're just not the right person for that role because
right. It's not good or bad. Right.
yeah,
There's not there. It's not good or bad or right or
yeah,
wrong. There's no pass or fail. It's just when you know that that's how someone is hardwired, or that's who they are. Well, that's the objective data that then to say, okay, I have the awareness. Like I have a tendency in my career to have because I have a little bit lower logic to have a tendency to show my emotions or verbalize where I probably should have kept my mouth shut.
hmm
And just having the awareness to know that uh, that this person's going to probably tell me something I do not want to hear, whether it's they're going to miss a forecast or a projection or whatever it may be. I'll call it sandbagging or blue sky, whatever it may be. Just having the presence to know, don't react, listen out, and then think through what you're going to say next and what's the ripple impact of that decision. You don't know that if you don't know how someone's heart, that does not show up on a resume.
Mm-mm. It
And,
doesn't.
and all of that, to your original question about keeping people or what does that do to performance,
Yeah, what does
all
it
of
do
that
when you keep
matters.
people in the wrong? And I think this is very nuanced. It's not so black and white. If
No.
someone's wrong or right for an organization, it just is. Like somebody's like me. I'm a daredevil, right?
Yep.
I'm very comfortable with risk. Like
Yep.
risk is something I'm very comfortable with. But on the other side of that is that sometimes that can be not profitable, right? I can just
Sure.
go into some type of place and want, and it can create chaos within my organization. It
Correct.
takes my people, my teams away. So I've had to learn how to just be quiet.
Hmm.
Like don't have all the ideas all the time. They're great, but I can't overwhelm everyone just because that's the way I'm wired, right? And I
Right.
know in the next episode, guys, we're going to talk more about how leaders are the bottleneck, like what
Yeah.
leaders do. So we'll go into that more. But I think this is a really good understanding is that it's not that someone is really right or wrong. It's more, are they wired? Are they the right match for where, and also where do you want to go as an organization, right? As we talk about scaling, like what's the next level for you for an organization? And maybe those people that you have now, those managers, and usually I would say we see the biggest effect with the wrong type of person is in middle management roles. Do you see that as well?
Yeah.
Like in these middle management roles?
Yeah. And it's above and below. It's how the middle manager is being managed
Correct.
and the people below them to where you're asking them to be not necessarily a leader, you're asking them to be a manager to manage your vision. Well, that's two different things.
Right.
If
Right.
you need someone to manage your vision, you're just looking for someone to go execute and run your playbook, not be
Right.
a manager. And I think
Right.
sometimes those two areas get clouded, where we just throw the word around of manager or leader, when really, what ultimately am I paying you to do? I'm paying you to run my playbook exactly the way I want you to run it. And you're going to have three direct reports underneath you to help you do that. Okay, so I'm more of a player coach. That's really what I am. I'm not leading anything.
Right.
I'm running your playbook. Okay, I can do that if that's what the vision, if that's what the goal is. But you've got to understand if a person is not hardwired that way, they may initially say it because the money's good, the culture's good, the company's good, but ultimately you're not going to get out of you're going to be back to square one on where you should have probably hired someone that's better at executing a playbook versus a starter visionary person that wants to create their own playbook.
And I'm curious, like, I mean, obviously you and I are in this, right? We're working with organizations, we're dealing with people, we have a lot of experience around this. This is what we do, hiring. You are helping companies after that hire, really organizing the teams, making sure that the full capacity is being done, the right people are there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
helping these leaders get to the next level in their scaling. But I'm curious, like, if you're an organization, you're watching this, what are some ways that you can identify if someone's engaged or not engaged in an organization? I'm curious from your perspective when what you see.
So there's a couple of different ways. So there's all I can speak for the tool that I use or that I advise the businesses that I work with, and um, without going too in depth into what I do with Culture Index, you've got to collect something other than just the KPIs. Like you can be hitting your budget, you can have an employee hitting their numbers, everything checks out, and then you get that Friday, hey, do you got a second? I need to talk to you, or the Monday morning call, and they're like, what's going on? They're like, hey, here's my 2 week notice, and you're completely blindsided.
Yeah.
So the indicators initially where things are fine, they're performing. Well, it goes much deeper than that, and you need to understand what ultimately, for example, I had a call the other day and it was around Q1 or finishing Q2 reviews, um, around a couple employees who were doing really well, but they had not had any conversations around what are we celebrating 24 months from now, because they are more hardwired to think more about their future, their 3 to 5 year goals. They want control of their destiny. And if they don't have it in the situation they're in, and they don't, then they're going to ultimately find a place where they can go. And so that conversation was all about, well, how do we know that they're engaged and they feel like they have not lost control. Well, using the tool we offer, it's through getting objective data to find out
Mhm.
what that looks like. If not, sometimes you can use those online versions like a 360
Right.
feedback to
Right.
understand. Those assessments are free. People can sometimes be hesitant based off the team. And we'll only have two people, so I know they're going to know what I said.
Mhm.
Uh, but other than that, I don't know of another way unless you verbally come out and ask them.
Mhm.
But you've got to be thinking about input in, input out. What specifically do I need to know? And you don't want to lead them either. Because if
No.
someone says, I am being micromanaged, or there are not, the restraints I have do not allow me to be innovative and think creatively or outside the box. How in the world would you know to even ask that? Are you able to think out? So you don't. So you're guessing.
Right.
Uh, but employee engagement can be something much different than how much I'm being paid and do I get to work remotely part time. That has
Mhm.
nothing to do with it. I mean,
It's
it's a
really,
factor,
yeah.
but it's not the real reason. I would encourage everyone to check out the Gallup study. There's a great study that comes out because the state of the workplace of employment, and it's the shows 2/3 of the workforce is disengaged, and they ask there were five primary reasons why, but the number one and number two was the person managing me, how I'm being managed, and two, fit. I feel like a
Mhm.
square peg in a round hole. And those were
Mhm.
the one and two. I think pay was like fifth.
Mhm.
And it's all around employee engagement. I was disengaged because of how I'm being managed and they're not using me the right way.
Mhm. I think people would be surprised. I mean, we obviously talk to hundreds of candidates and thousands probably a year. And people think, oh, all these people that we're, because we talk to a lot of people that are applying, people that are passive, people that are maybe just thinking about being in the job market. And almost always the reasons are number one, and a lot of times they'll say, oh, I really love the executive team. I love the leadership team, but I have this manager I don't know what to do. Like I'm in a situation where this manager is really well liked by everyone and it just it doesn't match. And that like what you said,
Yeah,
they don't feel like they fit into that role. And I think you as a company when you have these tools, whatever you decide to do, whether you invest in something that Walt does or something online or performance reviews, I think you have to do it because you're missing out on opportunities because a lot of times these are great people that you have in your organization that you have spent a lot of time with that are really dedicated and you'd be surprised we talk to people and they're like no I love the company they pay me well I love working there it's not that I love working in there
right.
I dread driving home every day I dread when this manager calls me I dread
Yeah,
that they're always nitpicking me or they're so react or whatever the style is right everyone's different but I do think that it's very important to have some type of tool to be able to have fact-based conversations with your people. Like understand
absolutely. And look, most people don't quit a company, they quit a boss, they quit a manager,
right,
majority of people.
right.
But um, I would say that if you are not in a world in 2026 where it is the days of having these 20-year, 30-year employees where everyone's getting a new job every 3 to 4 years, you have to find a way to keep your talent and retain your talent other than just giving them a bonus. And you've got to get more creative because if you're not using some form of objective data
Mhm.
to understand your employees better, your competitors are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we say. And that's what, a lot of times when people work with us, honestly, I feel like working with an outside recruiting firm or consulting firm or something like that, working with someone like you that's helping them with the hiring and then afterwards, it is a competitive edge. It is a
Sure.
competitive edge because the best organizations they are employing people like you. They are employing people like me. They are employing lots of people to look at the people side of their business because the last question is really, and I think we've really talked about this quite a bit, is if someone is misaligned, what does that actually cost a business day to day?
I mean, it just depends on, is it an executive? Is it an hourly employee?
Let's
Is it
just
a
say
salary?
it's let's say it is a, you know, an important role. Let's say it's a project manager, like a
Hmm.
really strong project manager in a niche place where it's hard to find them. You know, someone qualified, experienced, you know, does a great job, has the right values, shows up for work, but maybe they're misaligned in the sense that they're not engaged. And
Yeah.
what we've talked
So
about is maybe that's a result of the management style that they're being managed by.
yeah, and I would encourage everyone, for those that are still engaged on and listening, you can Google, or you can go to use any of the AI platforms, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT, and you can see the equations and the math associated with what's the cost of a disengaged employee. And just some of the percentages that you'll find is, if it's an hourly employee, it's 30 to 50% of whatever you're paying them. Like, if it's a salary employee, it's 100 to 150%. And if
Right.
it's an executive or sales, it's north of 400%. And those are conservative numbers, and those are not mine. That's pretty
Yeah.
much all the research you're going to find out there. So, and it's usually, it's too late. When you get the resignation, or you terminate them, or you put them on a performance improvement plan, or whatever it may be, which is why I say you hire them for what they know, and you let them go for who they are. Uh, it's going to be tied back to how they're managed
Right.
and role fit.
Right.
And the only way to truly know that is having some access to objective analytical data
Right.
on, when the newness of the job wears off, how is this person going to show up if I move them from 2 direct reports to 15?
Mhm.
If they go from having a $300,000 P&L to 15 million, and they are no longer provided the strategy, they must create it and come up with the plan themselves. How do I know they can do it?
Yeah.
And that disengagement begins to happen when the newness wears off, to say, okay, now let me the quiet quitting, and that's where that
Yeah.
can begin to happen.
Yeah. I
And then
mean,
some people have to be pushed out of the nest, and that can be even longer, because
right.
they can be miserable. Everyone can, and they're still going to stay in it. They're going to make you make a decision,
Right.
and that's
Right.
where those costs really add up.
And I think the other, and from us looking at it from a people side, like what we do is that the cost for misaligned people, whether it be that they're in the wrong seats, or the it costs you other people in your organization, because other people are having to take on the workload of that, or the chaos of it. Because I think it creates chaos in an organization when people aren't doing their job at the high. It takes away capacity, and
Sure.
so the leaders get a little bit more stressed out. Everything gets more stressed, right? And so then it creates. We see it all the time where there's a misaligned, and I'll say there's a misaligned employee from core values and, you know, the work piece. The work piece is easier to define, but the core values, or the right person. And they push out all these people out of their team because of it. Like
Hmm.
other people that are like a cascade, and you see it in this revolving door type of situation that happens
Yep.
in teams as well.
One thing I didn't mention, that in that same Gallup study, which is agnostic, has nothing to do with me or what you do, but you'll find, for those that want to do their own research, in that Gallup study, of the companies where their employees are engaged, they have a 23% higher profitability than those with disengaged. So,
Wow.
because it's a significant sample size, and it's a global study with
Right.
every business size from 5 employees to 5,000. So,
Right.
I would encourage everyone to check that out, because it goes to what you're saying on the cost of a disengaged employee.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we kind of talked about this, guys. I'm sorry, ran a little bit longer than we wanted to, but I think it's really just really important to understand that I don't think people realize that, just like, really honestly, we see it in organizations where one person, one wrong match or whatever that might look like, can deeply affect an organization, especially if they're in a role where they're managing quite a few people
Sure.
and they have, so, and I think something to that kind of take away from this is, it's very difficult to really evaluate someone just based on a resume, right? Just
Mhm.
based on the experience. If you don't have additional support, like, with us, with the way that we interview and what we do, and then partnering with you, it allows a bigger understanding of who this person is beyond that resume.
Yeah.
And with what you do, it helps you them understand how this person's really wired, and also the people that you existing have in your organization and how this person's going to really mesh with them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
As well.
And look, I'll leave you with this since you put this together and you're doing all the work and you're going to post this on all the different channels. If it's a benefit to you or any of your audience, I'll be more than happy to offer a complimentary diagnostic where I can tell you if someone's disengaged or not. It would be just a free offer if that's of interest. Just they can reach out to you or
Yeah.
ping me on LinkedIn, but they'll at least have actual data to know is their role fit or how they being managed. I'm happy to offer that to you.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll include that on the link so you guys can, when we post this, we'll include a link for Walt. So, or reach out to us directly if you want to get with Walt. I mean, honestly, we've worked with Walt on several clients, and having his tools and what he does, it really honestly enhances the search. It allows us to kind of go a little bit deeper and that deeper understanding. So, again, I appreciate you coming on
You
board,
bet.
guys. Next time, we're going to talk about something that I think that Walt and I talk about a lot. How the leaders are the bottleneck for the organization,
Mm.
because ultimately, let's be honest, it always comes back to that, right? So
Guilty.
guilty, 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 so many times. So thank you so much,
You
Walt,
bet.
and I look forward to connecting with you next time.
You bet. Thanks, Suman.
Bye.
See ya.